There are a lot of smart characters in Breaking Bad, like Mike, who jammed a parking ticket machine to escape Lalo, or Walt, who built a car battery from scratch to survive in the desert. And today, we are going to look over the smartest characters in Breaking Bad and ranking them based on intelligence, their ability to think on the spot, and their problem-solving skills. Starting with Mike Ehrmantraut. Before getting involved with criminals, Mike had already lived two lives, first as a Marine, then as a Philadelphia cop. That background shaped everything about him. He knew how criminals thought because he'd arrested them, and he knew how cops worked because he'd been one. But Michael wasn't just a normal cop, no, he had a history of bending the rules. Well, his whole department did really, running a few deals on the side. And after his son's death, seeing his daughter-in-law struggle and wanting to provide for his family, he crossed over fully into the criminal world. One of the first times we really see Mike's intelligence in action is when Nacho Varga asks Mike for help.
Pull up in the spot next to Tuco's. Pop. Headshot. Roll out.
Nacho wanted Tuco permanently gone, and Mike could have taken the easy way out by pulling the trigger. Still, he knew killing a Salamanca never goes without bloodshed. So instead, he came up with a plan that solved the problem without spilling blood.
There's no killing but your Tuco problem. It goes away.
He called the cops ahead of time, then went to a restaurant where Tuco was while deliberately bumping into Tuco's lovely vehicle and pretending it was an accident. Then he kept provoking him until Tuco finally snapped and started beating him in front of everyone. He even perfectly disarmed Tuco first, so when the police arrived, they caught Tuco assaulting Mike all according to plan, arresting him for assault and carrying an illegal firearm, sending him to prison for years. It's honestly one of the best examples of Mike's thinking. He solved problems by understanding people's actions and using it against them to get the outcome that he wants. Then there's that scene where he finds a tracker hidden inside his car's gas cap. Instead of throwing it away or confronting anyone, he studies it. He replaces the battery, switches it with his own tracker, and waits. Hours later, when the new battery dies, he follows the man who comes to replace it and finds out he's being watched by Gustavo Fring. Most people probably would have smashed it or thrown it away, but Mike, he used it as bait, and later we see how it impresses Gus to the point that they start working together and playing Fortnite after hours. But then another moment that showed Mike's quick thinking was when Lalo Salamanca started following him. Mike intentionally turned into a parking garage, flattened out a piece of gum, and on the way out, he stuck it in the ticket machine, which jammed it. The gate, it broke down just long enough for Mike to slip away and lose Lalo. That scene showed that Mike's intelligence wasn't just in planning ahead, it was also in improvising in the moment. But what really made Mike stand out wasn't just how he reacted in dangerous moments, it was how he prepared for them before they even started. One of his smartest little tricks was the carbon paper under the doormat. Whenever someone stepped on it, the paper would leave a faint but clear impression of their shoes. This let Mike know exactly who'd been lingering outside his door while he was away. And you should really sleep with one eye open if Mike Ehrmantraut has a vendetta to get you, cause after Hector's men threatened Kaylee, Mike decided to intercept their truck that smuggled their cash across the border. He set up a hose filled with nails, blew out the truck's tires, and waited for it to roll into a ditch. Then he tied up the driver, cut open the tires, and took the hidden money. It was the cleanest way he could hit Hector without starting a war. But he doesn't stop at one truck, no. He ties up shoes filled with cocaine and throws it on top of the truck to get it breached at the border. We also saw Mike's calm approach when Lalo Salamanca survived the attack on Hank and ended up in a heavily guarded hospital ward. Despite the presence of the DEA agents and hospital staff, Mike infiltrated the ward and injected a fatal injection into Lionel's IV. Lionel died soon after that from what appeared to be natural causes, leaving no trace of Mike's involvement. But it's insane what Mike can do with ordinary things, because when 4 cartel hitmen stormed a warehouse owned by Gus's chemical supplier, Mike used balloons to cut the building's electricity, creating chaos that allowed him to take out all 4 attackers with precise timing. And just by looking at Chow, he was able to tell someone else was in the room and eliminated him using Chow's signals. I think about that scene all the time. Even after Gus was killed, Mike stayed 2 steps ahead. When Chris was hired by Lydia to take out men linking her to Gus, Mike caught him off guard, confirmed Lydia's involvement, and killed him instantly.
Are you ready?
This is Mike.
Yet, for all of his skill, Mike's flaw was that he could never see beyond the job in front of him. He didn't dream big like Walt or play 4D chess like Gus, and he wasn't as cautious as other characters, ultimately leading to his death at the hands of Walter White. But I think all of us can agree that Mike was the greatest fixer money could buy. But while Mike was busy jamming a parking gate or cleaning up a crime scene, Saul Goodman was operating on a completely different scale. Saul Goodman. For most people, a law degree is about rules and a lot of studying, but for Saul Goodman, it was the ultimate legal loophole to run scams. His intelligence was all about reading people, finding their weaknesses, and then setting up an elaborate strategy to get the exact result he wanted.
It's showtime, folks.
But before Jimmy McGill ever became Saul Goodman, he learned his first real lesson about the world in his father's store.
There are wolves and sheep in this world, kid. Figure out which one you're gonna be.
That line stuck with Jimmy. After that, he knew how to survive. You had to take what's yours, and over time, he became known as Slippin' Jimmy, pulling petty scams like the time he and Marco managed to sell a coin to a businessman at a bar for $100, or running the famous Rolex scam, where Jimmy and Marco fooled a guy into thinking he'd stumbled onto a drunk stranger with a Rolex.
I'll just keep the watch.
Well, it's worth like $3,000, man. 3,000 easy.
No.
Yeah.
And then there's the time he straight up convinced a woman he was the actual Kevin Costner. And she believed it enough to go home with him.
You are not Kevin Costner.
I was last night.
Man, I wish I could do that. My name is Kevin, but it's not Costner. But anyway, this life of petty crime came to a halt when he was arrested after defecating through a sunroof. Chuck bailed him out, pushing him towards a real career, and eventually Jimmy became a lawyer. One of the first times we see Saul's intelligence is when he tries to get hired by the Kettlemans. Oh boy, those guys. At first, the Kettlemans don't take Jimmy seriously, so he had to force their attention. He staged a fake accident with 2 skateboarder cons, but when the plan went completely sideways and they ended up at Tuco Salamanca's house, Jimmy talked his way out of a death sentence.
My point is, if they're still alive, why kill us? Why?
Even in the desert, when the skateboarders snitched on him, he convinced Tuco to spare all of their lives.
So these 2 geniuses ran their little stunt on the wrong one.
Then came the Mesa Verde situation. When Chuck and Howard took back Mesa Verde, Jimmy snuck into Chuck's house, found the Mesa Verde filings, and changed a single address number. One tiny detail that he spent hours in the copy shop for and made Chuck look like a fool.
1261 Rosella Drive. But on the actual filing, the address reads 1216. So, which is it?
Jimmy single-handedly humiliated one of the smartest lawyers without anyone noticing him. But the fallout from that led to one of Jimmy's smartest plays yet. Chuck wanted Jimmy disbarred for what he had done, and Saul planned every tiny detail to make sure Chuck would have a meltdown in court. From inviting his ex-wife Rebecca from overseas to planting a battery, every step of the way Jimmy knew exactly what Chuck would do. And after setting up the stage, all it took was asking Chuck one single thing, like a magician asking you to check your pocket.
Could you reach into your breast pocket and tell me what's there?
Jimmy's intelligence was also about quick thinking and effort, like the Sandpiper case, while helping elderly residents write their wills and noticed they were being overcharged for basic items. When he saw staff shredding documents, he immediately ran to the toilet, grabbed a toilet paper roll, and wrote a legal notice on it to force them to stop destroying evidence.
This is a demand letter informing Sandpiper Crossing of pending litigation for defrauding my clients through systematic overcharging. You're shredding in there. I'm not deaf.
Jimmy single-handedly started a class action lawsuit worth millions, uncovering Sandpiper's fraud and building the foundation of a massive RICO case. And how can I forget the time he got Huel out of jail? After Huel hit a cop with a bag of sandwiches to protect Saul, he panicked and wanted to run away. So Jimmy created an entire fake support network from scratch. He had college students pretend to be community members, made burner phones, wrote hundreds of fake letters from pastors, built a fake church website, and even did a full church performance as a pastor.
Hello there, Free Will Baptist, Pastor Hansford speaking. Who dis?
He flooded the DA's office with so much fake support that they backed off completely. I think this scene perfectly sums up what made Saul Goodman truly smart. He could read people, predict reactions, and turn almost any scenario into a win. But he pulled one of the smartest courtroom moves when he proved a witness couldn't even recognize the real robber by swapping his defendant with a random bartender.
I don't need time, that's him.
Now, would you be surprised to learn, Mr. Harkness, that the person you just pointed to is not the defendant?
Oh, Mr. Goodman, really?
You didn't recognize him either, Your Honor.
And this kind of planning ahead and strategy reached its peak when he teamed up with Kim to destroy Howard Hamlin. Oh boy. Saul broke into Howard's locker at the prestigious Santa Fe Country Club and strategically planted a small bag of fake cocaine inside of his golf bag on the day he was meeting Clifford.
Howard? What? This can't be.
Sure looks like it.
But that wasn't nearly enough, no sir. They later stole his car and threw a hooker out of it, perfectly timing it again with Kim taking a meeting with Cliff. And to add a cherry on top, they convinced the Kettlemans that Howard lost them their case because he is
A person of substance. I know.
But the final nail in the coffin was Rand Casimiro. They hired a look-alike actor to pose as the judge. Though their initial photos were ruined when they discovered the real judge had a broken arm, Kim insisted that the plan continue. They scrambled to reshoot the bribe photo and quickly circulated it to Howard's private investigator, who was secretly working for them, coating the images with drugs as well.
Sorry about that. I'm fresh out of the bath.
At the mediation session, when Howard saw Judge Casimiro, he immediately accused him of taking a bribe, and he brought up the photos. However, when the photos were shown, they had been secretly swapped with an image of Jimmy innocently handing a frisbee to a jogger. With his drug-induced dilated pupils and wild accusations, Howard looked completely unhinged and unreliable to everybody present.
Somehow he switched them.
Howard?
No, Jimmy. He snuck in somehow, and
Mr. Hamlin, are you all right? Your eyes.
I am fine.
This total campaign of psychological harassment was the final masterpiece that ruined Howard's reputation and forced the Sandpiper settlement. But once Saul stepped into Walter White's life, everything escalated. Breaking Bad literally wouldn't exist without him. Walt only got anywhere near Gus because Saul introduced him. That single connection turned Walt from a small-time cook selling through Jesse into someone operating on a massive industrial scale. Speaking of Jesse, he even helped Jesse repurchase his house by using blackmail about the meth lab in the basement and forced Jesse's parents to sell it for less than half the price.
I just thought some allowance was in order once I heard about the meth lab.
He also laid out every money laundering operation for Walter, walking him through how to clean drug money without getting caught, even coming up with the idea to turn Flynn's school fundraiser website into a front for laundering cash. It's like Patreon before Patreon. Then the DEA arrested Badger, and Saul solved the problem by hiring a career criminal, Jimmy In-N-Out, to be arrested as a Heisenberg decoy. And when Hank nearly caught Walt and Jesse red-handed in the RV at the junkyard, Saul saved them with quick thinking, faking Marie's emergency to pull Hank away just in time. I mean, let's be honest, people. Without Saul, Walt dies in season 1, Jesse goes to prison, and the Blue Meth Empire never gets off the ground. Even in his final court hearing, with all of the evidence against him, Saul managed to negotiate a plea deal for 7.5 years in prison, despite everything he did. But instead of just taking that deal, he confessed everything.
If he hadn't walked into my office that day, Walter White would have been dead or behind bars within a month.
But as smart as Saul was, few characters managed to outshine him. While it's definitely debatable if Saul deserves to be ranked higher, our next entry shows what happens when you combine intelligence with more ruthlessness as well. Gustavo Fring. On the surface, Gustavo Fring ran a successful chicken restaurant, and he seemed like an ordinary businessman, but behind the scenes, he was building one of the most powerful drug empires in the country. Every move, every person, and every part of his business served a purpose because he always thought of everything ahead. When the cartel killed his partner, Max, Gus spent the next 20 years building power, earning trust and waiting for the perfect moment to hit back. And the smart part is how he made sure nobody ever suspected him in the first place. He didn't stay away from the DEA like normal criminals, and instead befriended them. He built a relationship with the head of DEA, Asak Merkin, donated to police charities, sponsored community events, and made himself look like the last person who'd ever run a drug empire, just a nerd who loves chicken. And while the DEA saw him as a polite businessman, Gus was quietly building the most important piece of his entire empire, the underground superlab. He brought in top-tier engineers from overseas to build it, and to keep the project completely secret, they housed the entire crew in a remote warehouse with 2 double-wide mobile homes inside of it, and every morning they were transported to the construction site in total secrecy. And once the lab was finally completed, it became the perfect cover. The constant heat, noise, and steam from the laundry above made anything happening underground look completely normal.
The laundry upstairs, I've owned it for years, receives large chemical deliveries on a weekly basis. There is nothing suspicious about it.
Gus even gave Walt a personal tour and offered him the chance to cook in a facility that looked nothing like a drug lab.
I need 200 pounds per week to make this economically viable.
You would choose your own hours, of course. Come and go as you please.
Man, I wish I could choose my own hours. But Walt still refused, and that's when Gus showed just how good he was at manipulating people.
A man provides for his family, and he does it even when he's not appreciated or respected. He simply bears up, and he does it because he's a man.
And y'all, his manipulation, it didn't stop there. But wait, there's more. Gus knew that the only thing getting in the way of Walt becoming the perfect, obedient little cook was Jesse. So he started working on separating them. He invited Walt over for dinner at his house while toys were scattered around to make it seem like he had kids. And during cooking, he also casually mentioned how
this is a Chilean dish that I love. but I never get to make it. Kids won't eat it.
But in reality, none of it was real. He had no close family at all, and it was just another layer of manipulation to make Walt see him as a trustworthy, responsible man. During the dinner, he positioned himself as a mentor and warned Walter against making mistakes, especially those involving Jesse.
Never make the same mistake twice.
But once Gus realized Walt was becoming too unpredictable to handle, he shifted his focus and started using his manipulation on Jesse instead. Mike took Jesse along to collect dead drops of cash, and at the last stop, Jesse saw a guy with a shotgun walking up to the car. He panicked, reversed, and actually managed to escape with the cash while the attackers chased him down. But what Jesse didn't know was that the whole thing was staged by Gus to give him a sense of purpose and to build trust with Mike. Slowly, Jesse started seeing Walt as the paranoid problem, while Gus began looking like the safer, more stable father figure. But when the DEA found Gus's fingerprints inside of Gail's apartment, they finally had a real reason to question him. Most criminals would panic the second they're dragged into a federal interrogation room, but Gus walked in like he was there to donate more money. When asked why his prints were at the murder scene, Gus already had a flawless cover prepared. He explained that Gail received a chemistry scholarship that Gus had created to honor Max, and it's how they first met.
15 years ago, I established a chemistry scholarship at UNM.
Gail later approached him at Los Pollos Hermanos about a potential project and invited him over for a dinner to discuss funding. But Gus claimed he turned him down, left after the meal, and never saw Gail again until reading about his death. When Hank pressed his untraceable Chilean past, Gus instantly countered with,
But it was also notoriously unreliable at keeping records.
But while Hank found nothing, things between Walt and Gus were at an all-time low. Walt had been fired, Jesse was siding with Gus, and he knew his family wasn't safe anymore. That's when Walt poisoned Brock and convinced Jesse that Gus was the one who did it. Jesse called Gus to the hospital.
Tyrus told me what's happening.
But at the moment Gus saw Jesse at the hospital, he knew instantly something was off. If he hadn't poisoned Brock, then the only person who could have pushed Jesse there was Walt, and he quickly realized this whole meeting could be a setup. Instead of heading back to his car, Gus awoke his spidey senses and changed his routine. Walking away from the parking lot, avoiding the bomb planted by Walter, what a crazy scene. But one of the clearest signs of Gus's intelligence came in Better Call Saul, when Nacho Vargas secretly swapped Hector's heart pills. Gus, he figured it out almost instantly, and instead of killing Nacho on the spot, he decided to make him useful. He turned Nacho into an inside man, forcing him to feed information from the Salamanca operation straight to him. And when Lalo asked Nacho to burn down one of Gus's restaurants, he went along with it so that it looked like Gus was the victim. When the assassination attempt on Lalo failed, he manipulated Nacho to trick the cartel into believing he was the one behind it, and he secretly worked for a rival Peruvian cartel.
It was Alvarez. Los Ojos out of Peru. They paid me to set up your nephew. And I did.
And then there's the way he manipulated the cousins, the cartel's most feared hitmen. First, he lured them into wiping out a rival gang for him so he could take over their territory without risking any of his own people. Then, once they became a liability, he redirected them away from Walt and then sent them straight at Hank.
2 men are coming to kill you.
Come again?
They're approaching your car. You have 1 minute.
In Gus's mind, the outcome didn't matter. If Hank died, the DEA would blame the cartel. If Hank survived, the cartel would lose 2 of its deadliest soldiers. And when Lionel survived the attack, Gus knew he couldn't leave any loose ends. He showed up at the hospital carrying chicken for all of the DEA agents, and while everyone was busy thanking him for the food, Mike slipped past security and killed Lionel. The attack on Hank put intense pressure from the US government on the Mexican authorities to clean up the cartel's operation, and Gus manipulated the situation to get rid of Bolsa. When Juan Bolsa tried to escape during a raid, he was gunned down, giving Gus the perfect opportunity to remove a major rival without touching the cartel directly. After getting rid of Bolsa, Gus was finally in a position to take down the cartel at the top. He orchestrated an evil plan to avenge Max's death and eliminate Don Eladio without putting himself directly at risk. He brought a poisoned bottle of tequila to a meeting at Eladio's place, drank from it first to prove it was safe, and then excused himself to vomit the poison while the cartel leaders drank from it. And one by one, Don Eladio and the other top guys collapsed and died, leaving Gus in complete control. But despite all of his planning, Walter White still managed to outsmart him in the end. But before we even get to Walt, there's Lalo Salamanca, who I personally think was much smarter than Gus. Lalo Salamanca. Lalo was part of the Salamanca family, but unlike most of his cousins, Lalo combined charm, observation, and calculation with the willingness to act violently when needed. From the moment he first showed up and met Nacho, he acted like he was just an old friend.
You are going to love this. I made this just for you.
But even with his friendly attitude, Lalo was constantly asserting dominance. Every question he asked served a purpose, as he instantly wanted to know how the business was running, who was handling what, and whether Nacho was actually trustable. And once he settled in, the next person he wanted to test was Gustavo Fring. Lalo showed up at Los Pollos Hermanos with Nacho and ordered food like he was just another customer. When Gus came over to check on them, Lalo kept the same friendly tone, complimented the chicken, and asked to meet the owner, even when he knew who Gus was.
Is there any chance, and I know the answer is probably no, but is it possible for me to meet the owner?
Lalo played along and went with him to the office, but inside, he changed the direction of the conversation.
¿Alguna vez te has puesto a pensar que ese Don Eladio es un cabrón?
Lalo watched Gus's reaction closely, waiting to see if he'd slip, agree, or reveal anything he shouldn't.
I am satisfied with the current arrangement.
But Lalo knew that Gus was hiding something, so he decided to follow Mike across Albuquerque. And even when Mike managed to lose him, like we mentioned earlier, Lalo still pieced together where he was heading. He went straight to Travel Wire, and when Fred refused to give information, Lalo simply slipped into the ceiling, dropped behind the counter, killed Fred, and pulled the security footage and brochures to find Mike's lead. That tiny bit of information was enough for him to call Werner's Hotel, pretend to be a part of the crew, and start asking questions about the construction project.
I'm calling on behalf of Gustavo Fring.
The moment Mike cut in and ended the call, Lalo realized Mike had arrived there and was already connecting every detail in real time. At the same time, he started asking questions about the Salamanca operation and quickly picked up a rumor from Nacho and Domingo that the cocaine being sold wasn't pure. And instead of just believing it, Lalo went to a stash house in a great scene to see for himself and instantly realized some of it had been replaced with meth.
These are okay, but these shit's not ours, man.
And since the cocaine was coming from Gus, Lalo forced a meeting with him and Bolsa. By pressing Gus with clever questions about the construction project, Lalo made him admit that there was a secret operation going on.
What construction project?
Even though Gus only showed them the massive structure being built for an industrial chiller, Lalo's questioning was enough to make him admit that he hid something from the cartel. And when Crazy 8 got arrested, someone like Tuco or Hector would have immediately tried to get him killed. But Lalo, he saw an opportunity. Instead of acting impulsively, he used the situation to gain leverage over Gus's operation by having Saul deliver a carefully crafted message to Domingo in the detention center. Lalo turned him into a DEA informant and gave them info on a bunch of drop sites for Gus's dealers.
All I know is that there are these 3 dead drops they run on Thursday nights.
Hold on.
This move gave Lalo inside access to law enforcement, allowing him to monitor and disrupt Gus's network from the inside. And when Saul managed to get him released on bail after he was arrested, Lalo was suspicious about the delay and asked Saul if everything went okay.
Well, you must have a story.
And that wasn't enough for Lalo to figure out something didn't add up. He went to the crashed site, did his superhuman jump, finding Saul's car riddled with bullet holes, and then went to Saul and Kim's apartment unannounced, refusing to let Kim leave as he pressed Saul for the truth about what really happened.
Tell me what happened when you picked up the money. Walk me through it.
Saul almost revealed the truth too, but Kim stepped in like a badass and defended him. But with bigger problems demanding his attention, Lalo let it go and left for Mexico. On his first night in Mexico, Gus used Nacho to send a team to take him out at his own compound. But Lalo's quick thinking and sharp instincts kept him alive. Lalo spotted the first assassin through the window and quickly ducked behind Ciro, using him as a shield just long enough to stay alive. He ran to the bathroom, locked the door, and revealed a secret tunnel under the bathtub. But by leaving the hatch open, he let the assassins come to him one by one, taking them out. Then he forced the last survivor to report that Lalo is dead. Even after surviving the attack, Lalo spotted Nacho's untouched drink and immediately pieced together who was involved and how the ambush was planned. But Lalo's planning went even further when he faked his own death. He'd prepared for this long ago by establishing a relationship with the Ramos family. Mateo, in particular, resembled Lalo closely, and Lalo even paid for Mateo's dental work so that if it ever came, Mateo's teeth could pass for his own. After the ambush, Lalo went to the Ramos house where he asked Mateo to shave but leave his mustache.
Déjate el bigote, se te ve bien.
While Mateo was getting ready, Lalo killed Sylvia with a pair of scissors. He then killed Mateo and burned his body so it would be mistaken for Lalo's. By controlling every detail, he made sure his enemies, the authorities, and even the cartel would believe he was dead. With everyone believing he was dead, Lalo didn't waste time. He traveled to Berlin, posing as a businessman from New Mexico named Ben, blending in while quietly gathering information. At a local bar, Lalo casually talked to and rigged up Margaret Ziegler and picked up clues about Werner's death and the secret project in New Mexico. The next day, he slipped into her house, saw a lucite book, traced who made it, and tracked Casper into the woods. Casper tried to fight him with an axe, but Lalo shut him down fast and forced out the truth, confirming that Werner's crew had been building something huge for Gus. He returned to Albuquerque and called Hector to relay what he'd learned, but immediately realized Gus had bugged the line. Instead of panicking, Lalo used the situation to his advantage and told Hector that he couldn't find proof against Gus and was going to strike Gus that night.
Es que vuelvo al plan original. A él le va a llegar una sorpresa hoy en la noche.
After that, he showed up at Kim and Saul's apartment unannounced again and killed Howard just to assert his dominance. Then, he forced them into following his plan and sent Kim to Gus's house to kill him. But Lalo never intended for Kim to succeed. He just wanted Mike to call for help, which would pull Gus's remaining security away from the laundry. Once everyone was distracted, Lalo snuck into the laundry facility. Inside, he ambushed Gus's guards, captured Gus, and forced him to record a video showing the secret meth lab to send to Don Eladio as proof of Gus's betrayal.
Don Eladio, he escuchado algunas historias sobre este lugar.
For a moment, Lalo had outsmarted everyone. He had predicted their moves, manipulated the situation perfectly, and turned his enemies' actions against them. Of course, we all knew he had to meet his end, and while it was a somewhat underwhelming finale for someone like him, it doesn't take away just how dangerous and smart he was. Lalo's ability to anticipate reactions, plan multiple steps ahead, and exposing Gus Fring's whole operation proved that he was one of the smartest characters that we've seen in either show. Bro caught him in 4K, or more likely 480p with that camera, but speaking of brilliant minds, the last character on our list takes intelligence to an entirely different level. Walter White. From the very beginning, Walter White's brilliance was evident, even before he entered the criminal world. Our first clear sign of Walt's scientific genius came from his involvement with gray matter technologies. In a flashback, it's revealed that he co-founded the company with his friend Elliot Schwartz and his ex-girlfriend Gretchen Schwartz. Walt's research laid the foundation for the company's eventual success and becoming a multi-billion-dollar company. The company even got nominated for a Nobel Prize for its work on molecular switches, yet he sold his share for only $5,000 back then. This moment showed Walt's intelligence in its purest form, having the ability to create a world-changing company based entirely on his own research.
You wrecked me. What did I dream? All that?
The loss of gray matter also foreshadowed how his ego would shape his later choices, turning intellectual power into a tool for both creativity and destruction. As we move into his meth cooking days, that scientific mind became the core of everything he did. You would assume that Walt's first cook in the RV wouldn't be anything special, but he still produced the purest product anyone had ever seen.
This is glass grade. Jesus, you got crystals in here 2 inches, 3 inches long. This is pure glass.
In the whole market, nobody else could match his 99.1% purity. It was a level of precision even a Nobel-winning chemist like E.J. Corey would admire. But Walt's observational skills and analytical thinking were just also on another level. When things went sideways with Emilio and Crazy 8 in the desert, using his knowledge of chemistry, he created phosphine gas, which instantly suffocated Emilio and knocked out Crazy 8. Walt was able to adapt and figure out the best thing to survive in seconds. After holding Crazy 8 captive in Jesse's basement, Walt fell down the stairs while bringing him food. The plate shattered in multiple pieces, and Walt threw it away in the trash. Later, as Walt was about to let Crazy 8 go, he opened the bin to toss his beer can, and something didn't look right. His brain signaled a piece was missing, and after counting the broken pieces, he realized that Crazy 8 had picked up one of them to use as a weapon.
The moment I do, are you gonna stick me with that broken piece of plate?
This simple observation saved his life, and it demonstrated his ability to apply the same careful reasoning he used in chemistry to human behavior. Walt's chemical expertise also came in handy to later dispose of the bodies of Crazy 8 and Emilio using hydrofluoric acid. But cooking and cleanup weren't the only times Walt's intelligence took over. When Tuco Salamanca beat Jesse and stole their meth, Walter decided to pay Tuco a visit. He walked into Tuco's hideout carrying a bag of crystals that looked like he'd brought more meth, but in reality, they were mercury fulminate, a highly unstable explosive. When Tuco refused to pay like the jerk he is, Walt threw a single piece onto the floor, causing a massive explosion that blew out the windows and stunned everyone in the room.
You got one part of that wrong. This is not meth.
Walt needed Tuco to see him as someone dangerous enough to respect, and a meth look-alike crystal explosion was just the thing he needed. To meet Tuco's quota, Walt switched to the P2P method, which needed methylamine. Since they couldn't get it legally, he had made thermite, melted through a secured warehouse lock, and walked it out with a full drum like it was nothing.
Is this gonna be loud?
And what about that time the stolen methylamine was about to go bad?
Our methylamine. It's going bad.
What?
Since Jesse was busy with his newfound love and refused to cook, Walt manipulated him by telling him that the methylamine was about to go bad, and the only way to make it work is if they cooked for 4 days straight. I mean, what could go wrong? They headed into the desert, cooked non-stop, and ended up with 42 pounds of meth. But when they were finally ready to leave, everything fell apart. Earlier, Jesse had left the keys in the ignition, and a dashboard light drained the RV's battery. Walt tried jump-starting it with the generator, but Jesse spilled gas on it, and the whole thing caught fire. Jesse called Skinny Pete for help, but he got lost in the desert, and Walt's phone died before Jesse could guide him again.
Yeah, hey, yo, what river? Hey, Pete, what the hell river are you talking about, man? There's no river. Hey, yo, Pete, can you...
With no rescue coming, they spent the next morning hand-cranking the generator for hours in the heat. The RV even started for a second before dying again, and that tiny moment of hope disappearing crushed both of them.
I have it coming. I deserve this.
Jesse panicked and begged Walt to invent something, throwing out ideas like building a robot.
You make some kind of robot to get us up, or a homing device, or build a new battery, or...
And that's when Walt's brain kicked in. He realized he could build a makeshift battery using coins, galvanized metal, and chemicals from the RV. He put it together piece by piece, hooked it up, and the spark was enough to start the engine. This scene showed Walt's ability to apply fundamental scientific principles in practical high-pressure situations, combining chemistry, physics, and resourcefulness, something I could never do. But Walt's quick thinking, it didn't stop in the desert. Later, when he and Jesse got trapped inside the RV with Hank right outside, Hank tried to use the bullet holes in the door as a probable cause to break in. Walt stepped in quickly and whispered the exact lines Jesse needed to say, guiding him word for word.
How could you have known they were there before you took off the tape?
This forced Hank to step back and wait for a warrant instead of kicking the door down. Later, when Gus threatened Walt and his family, he realized the only way to beat Gus was by separating him from Jesse. So he poisoned Brock, which we mention all the time on this channel, with Lily of the Valley, a plant he knew would make Brock sick. Walt gave just enough of a dose to send Brock to the hospital and manipulated Jesse that Gus was responsible.
Who's okay with using children? Jesse, who do you know? Who's allowed children to be murdered?
Once Jesse was back on his side, he made a homemade pipe bomb and used Hector Salamanca as bait, knowing Gus wouldn't ignore Hector suddenly cooperating with the DEA. And when Gus walked into the nursing home to punish Hector, the trap went off exactly the way Walt calculated.
What happened?
I won.
Y'all, there was truly nothing this man couldn't build or manipulate when he set his mind to it. The entire plan showed how Walt understood Gus's psychology, predicted his exact response, and built a trap so specific that only Gus's own pride could trigger it. But with Gustavo Fring now gone, Walt had to deal with the evidence that tied them together. When Gus's laptop ended up in the DEA evidence room, Walt came up with one of the most creative solutions: a giant electromagnet.
Yeah, bitch! Magnets! Oh!
Instead of breaking in or stealing the laptop, he built a massive magnetic rig inside of a truck, parked it outside the wall, and wiped the hard drive from a distance. After wiping the laptop, Walt needed a fresh system for cooking, and that's when he created the Vamonos Pest setup. It became one of his smartest business moves, letting him run a high-level meth operation inside of fumigated homes while leaving almost no trace behind.
The house is infested, and that's where we'll cook.
He merged a legal business with an illegal one so smoothly that even the workers around him had no idea what was going on. And honestly, how do you talk about Walt being smart without mentioning the train heist? Jesse might have come up with the weight swap trick, but Walt was the one who turned that idea into a full-blown precision operation. He picked the exact spot in the desert where the train would slow down, timed everything perfectly, and coordinated everyone. He even had Kubi Bill Burr block the crossing with a dumpy truck to make sure the train would stop right where they needed it. Walter managed the pumps, monitored the flow, and made sure the operation stayed hidden from the train crew. At the end, the crew drove off without realizing a single gallon had been stolen. And then afterwards, when Mike tried to cash out by selling the methylamine, Walt treated that offer like it was an insult. In Walt's head, selling the methylamine was the dumb move, since cooking the 1,000 gallons of methylamine into meth would bring in something like $300 million. When Mike detained Walt to keep him from interfering with the Declan deal, he zip-tied Walt to a radiator and left him there with no way out.
Give me a wrist.
Most people would have just waited, but Walt immediately started scanning the room like it was another puzzle to solve. He then spotted an electrical cable, stripped it open, and used the live wire to slowly melt through the plastic zip tie. He burned his wrist doing it, but it didn't matter if it was painful or not as long as it freed him. But Walt's final display of intelligence came in his last hours, when the neo-Nazis had taken his money and held Jesse captive. Walt bought a freaking M60 machine gun and built a custom rig inside the trunk of his car, powering it with a car battery and connecting it to a garage door opener so he could fire it remotely. He measured everything: the angle, the height, the sweep of the bullets, so the gun would hit everyone the moment the trunk opened. Earlier that day, he also took care of Lydia, bye-bye, during their cafe meeting. He slipped ricin into her stevia packet, knowing she'd never notice it since she used it the exact same way every time. At Jack's compound, Walt parked the car in the exact spot that he had planned. He then let himself get frisked, but managed to keep the keys hidden. Inside, he provoked Jack until Jesse was brought into the room. And when he saw the chains and bruises, he tackled Jesse to the ground and hit the remote. The trunk popped open, the M60 fired, and the entire gang was wiped out in seconds, while Walt was hit in the crossfire. At the end of the day, Walt was just on a whole different level. He was always thinking 10 steps ahead, predicting what everyone else would do, and making things work in his favor.
Mr. White, he's the devil.
I don't think there's any other character in the series that even comes close to how smart Walter White truly is. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed our ranking of the smartest characters in Breaking Bad. Let us know in the comments if you think we got it right, or if you think we missed someone who deserves to be on the list. But press all the buttons. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a good one, and bye-bye!